We're doing chapter 3 today, which is expressions. And to start off, we're going to start with 3.1, which is algebraic equations. So our learning goal today is that I can simplify algebraic equations. And I want you to write this at the top of your notes. With video notes, you can pause at any time to write things down. Just know that whenever you do pause, it does take a little bit longer for you to complete the video. So we're going to scroll down here and we're actually going to skip the warm-up for today. We'll come back to it another day. And we're going to go down to our vocab. So we have like terms, coefficients, and constant terms. So like terms are terms with the same variable raised to the same exponent and they're also constant terms. And we'll give an example of that here in 1 second. Coefficients are, these are the numbers being multiplied by the variable. Constant terms are the terms without a variable. And then at the bottom, I also want you to add in a variable. Most of you have heard of this term. I believe that you guys learned about it in 6th grade, but this would be the letter in an equation, and it's unknown. So what that means is we don't know what number is actually there. It can be any number, and we just use a letter in its place until we figure out what that number is. All right, so before we start, we need to talk about invisible math. And so invisible math would be when we have something that looks like this, so negative x. That's the same thing as negative 1x. We just don't have to write the 1. We consider it already there. So we don't have to actually add that there. So we call that invisible math because just like how every number has a 1 underneath it, and we don't have to write that, it's the same thing with coefficients. So when we have a negative x, we have a coefficient of negative 1. And just like when we have just an x, this is saying that we have a coefficient of just positive 1. So this is just 1x. Those are the same thing. That 1 is invisible. We don't have to write it. You can and it won't be considered wrong, but either way, x and 1x are the same thing, and negative x and negative 1x are the same thing. All right, so an example of simplifying terms, when there's an expression, that means we don't have an equal sign. So because there's not an equal sign, we're not going to get a full number. So like this equation doesn't equal anything. So all we can do is simplify it. Before we simplify, we need to identify the terms. So the number of terms, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 terms because there are 4 groups of numbers. So our terms are 9x. Our term number, so whatever sign is in front of it, so just because that's a subtraction sign, we also will consider that a -2. We have a +7 because there's a positive in front of the 7. And then we have a -1x because, like I said, there's a 1 there. And so this whole term is -1x. When we have like terms, our like terms have the same variable, which is a letter. So if they have the same letter next to them, like this one has 9x and this one has -1x, since they both have an x, these terms are alike. So 9x and then -1x, those are like terms. And then we also have like terms that are without a letter. So 7 and 2 both don't have a letter. And so 7 and -2 are also like terms. So this is one group of like terms, and this is our second group of like terms. So down here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So our terms would be z squared. I'm going to put a slash through my z just so you guys know it's a z and not a 2. 5z, -3z squared, and then z. My like terms are the terms that look exactly alike. So we have z squared, so anything with a z squared, those two are alike. Z squared is not the same as z. They're very, very different. So you need to make sure that that is something that you take from this lesson. So our like terms are z squared and -3z squared. That's one group. Then we have 5z and just regular z. These are also like terms because they both only have a z attached to them. You'll notice there's not a constant. So a constant is a number without a letter in this one. So this one just has variables and coefficients. So I'm going to have you take a second and I want you to do these 3 problems on your own. And then play, so pause it during that time and then hit play when you are done to check your answers. All right, so simplifying algebraic equations. An algebraic equation or expression is in simplest form when it has no like terms and no parentheses. To simplify like terms that have variables, use the distributive property to add or subtract the coefficients. All right, so let's simplify. To do this, what do they have in common? They both have an n. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the n out. And if I got rid of the n, what would be left? So that goes in parentheses. So we have 6 minus 10 would be left over if I got rid of the n. So I'm just putting the n on the outside. And then 6 minus 10, this is going to give me -4. And then now we attach the n in front of it. And so our new answer, our simplified expression, is just -4n. So I'm going to show you that in one more time. What do they have in common? They have a w in common. And so I'm going to write that on the outside. And then I'm going to rewrite all of the coefficients, so all of the numbers that were next to the letter, and keep all the signs the same. And then this one was just a w, but remember we learned that w equals just 1w. So there's a coefficient of a 1 in front of it. And now we're going to add all these together. So these are different signs, so we're going to subtract, so -8.5 minus 5.2. and I get 3.3 plus 1. And this is negative because my bigger number was negative. And now I have to subtract again because they're different signs. So I'm going to subtract 1. So I get 2.3, and it's going to be negative. So now I have in here, I have 2.3, it's negative, and then my W. So when I write my answer, I'm going to say negative 2.3 W. And that is the simplified expression. So I want you to pause the video. I want you to do the try-its, and I want to see if you get the same answer as I do. So now that you can see the answers, I want you to pause the video again and see, we'll compare and see if you got your answers correct, and if you didn't, see where you maybe made a mistake in your steps. All right, example 5. So we're going to simplify it. So we are going to rewrite it so that way everything with a y is over here and everything without a y, that means without, is going to be down here. So we have 3/4 y, and then include the sign in front of it, so minus 1/2 y. And then below, I'm going to write these ones. So 12 minus 6. So over here, we need an LCM. Our LCM is going to be 4. So I can make 1/2 turn into something over 4 by multiplying by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. So now this is going to be 3/4 y minus 2/4 y. I take out my y, and 3 minus 2 gives me 1. So I have 1/4. And then I rewrite that as 1/4 y. And then 12 minus 6 equals just a positive 6. And then now my answer, I'm going to rewrite that as 1/4 y. And then this was a positive 6. So I'm going to put plus 6 because my answer was a positive 6. So this is my answer. That one was a little difficult. All right, so we're going to try this one more time. I'm going to do everything with a y first. So negative 3y minus 5y. I get rid of my y's. Negative 3 minus 5. I'm already negative 3, and I go deeper into the negatives. So I have negative 8. And so I have negative 8y. Now I'm going to look at my z's. So I have 4z plus 9z. So I take out my z's, and I have 4 plus 9. 4 plus 9 gives me 13. So I'm going to rewrite that as 13z. And this was positive. So I have negative 8y plus 13z because it was a positive 13z. So this is my answer. Go ahead and try the try-its. All right, go ahead and compare your answers with mine. Over here, I separated the z's. I took out the z's, and I had negative 3 plus 1. And then negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. So I have negative 2z plus 22 because 14 plus 8 gives me 22. And go ahead and check your other answers. And this is where we're actually going to end our notes today. And then we will come back to the rest of them next class period.